So unfortunately, we do not have a quorum tonight, so we won't be able to take any votes, any action, make any recommendations, but I understand that we can hold an informal discussion on the topics at hand. So I suppose first I'll ask if there's anyone that wants to come up and discuss any stormwater matters, recent flooding, or those events.
Hello. My name's Paul Perot. I'm Ward 1. I'm a resident of 60 years, and I'm a business owner for 31 years. So I've been in the township for a while. I don't know that I can stay too long, so that's why I'm up here. Can you tell me how many stormwater management projects were instituted, started, and completed in 2016, 17, 18? Have we had any stormwater management projects?
I think that Steve could probably speak to, he has a spreadsheet and running count of the projects that have been done using the stormwater funds.
Right, so we've had several infrastructure projects done. Marlbridge Road Culvert, Shimoni Road Culvert. We've had infrastructure pipe replacement projects that have occurred. Currently, as we speak, we have design contracts out for basin retrofits per the PRP. The Roberts Road Culvert is in the design phase. The North Wayne Field Basin, the cleaning and repairing and installation of sediment reduction devices, that's out to bid. That's hopefully going to be in front of the Board of Commissioners on the 24th. The Maplewood Road outfall, which is another infrastructure project, that too is out to bid and hopefully will be before the board for award on the 24th. Again, the Mayland Road culvert is in design. Upstream projects of the North Wayne Field Basin is in design. That's a green infrastructure project. The big ones, so we have flood reduction options in North Wayne and the Poplar Bypass, which was awarded to Melior Design. So when we talk about North Wayne, it wasn't just Poplar or this road, it was truly North Wayne. So it's, you know, from Eagle to Forest out, Poplar to Willow, Radnor Street, including West Avenue, where there was severe flooding. That's also part of that view. We also have flood reduction options on Midland Avenue, as well as the South Wayne Municipal Parking Lot. That's going to be designed, that's not a study or anything, that's to create a stormwater management facility at the South Wayne parking lot. Okay, that's in the design stage. And including full utilization of the stormwater management system at the Radnor Middle School, which currently is underutilized, not unutilized. We also have some other infrastructure projects that are going on right now. Wooten Road Storm Sewer, which is also out to bid, hopefully to be awarded in September. The Mill Road End Wall, we're awaiting the cost proposal. Arthur Road, which is another, we hope to bring to the board for design, to get the design contract approved. Brookside Avenue, which is right out here, which is another infrastructure project that we hope to bring to the board for design. So in total, we have about 20 projects in various stages of design. Some are out to bid, some will hopefully be awarded by the Board of Commissioners. So we have many projects. The two biggest by far are the North Wayne / Poplar Bypass. That is a flood mitigation project, as is the Midland Road South Wayne parking lot, South Wayne Avenue, that is another flood reduction project. And they're many faceted, and they encompass, sizable areas.
My question is, how come it's taken so long to address these issues? I have photographs. I don't know if we can put them up.
If you put them on the table, they'll come up on the screen. I think you got to slide it in more towards the center. There you go. Thank you.
That is Lancaster Avenue in front of Rite Aid in 2007. That whole street's flooded. That's Lancaster Avenue. Where did that water go? It had to have gone down to the fire department and the middle school. So from 2007, the township hasn't done anything. There's another view. There's a wave on Lancaster Avenue.
And I agree with you, and that's why I think the Stormwater Advisory Committee was started. This is our 5th year, so, it took the first year to really kind of get acclimated. A township-wide assessment study was done the second year, and when that was complete for the last over 2 years, we put forth various projects to the Board of Commissioners, and just unfortunately, they voted not to go forward with them.
This is Eagle Road, North Wayne Avenue. It's Norwood Apartment. And that doesn't look too bad. I had a friend that her SUV was just floated away. She had to be rescued. This is that's the Norwood Apartment where the stream is. That's thousands of gallons, if not millions, of water. So this is 2007. So my question is, how come the township hasn't done anything? We can give $2.5 million to the library as a donation. Yet all the residents down in Willow, and Poplar, and Plain, they're losing their cars, their houses are being gutted. We're gifting money, but we're not taking care of the township residents.
And I agree. That's why Paige and I, and this is what we do civil stormwater design. That's why we volunteer on this committee, because we do realize there's a problem. But we're only a committee that recommends. Unfortunately, that's to our extent. We can go before the board, we can work with the board, we try and work as best we can with the township, but we can only recommend projects, which we have. And that's why I'm still here, is because I really feel very strongly that there are lots of projects in the township we can go forward. And unfortunately, sometimes it takes an event, like what happened Monday, to jog everyone's memory to get going on some projects.
The other thing is, this is behind Rite Aid, and that's the nursing home. They're draining all their water into the Rite Aid parking lot that now goes down to the firehouse. So why isn't the township going after that nursing home to prevent this and make them do whatever stormwater management they have to do?
I guess it depends upon when that facility was constructed. I don't like the outfall situation I see there. There's probably something that could be done there. But if something is already built, unfortunately, you can't retroactively impose stormwater management.
That water, they're dumping their water on someone else's property.
But unfortunately, water all ends up going on somebody else's property. And while I don't like that outfall situation, I think that that's something that could, be remedied. Unfortunately, as Steve could tell you, we can't retroactively impose stormwater management regulations upon an existing facility.
That they just take their water and put it on someone else's property.
Well, that's what happened years ago. It's an older development, and that's,
Would you like these?
sure, if they're extra copy, that'd be great. And if there's ever anything you want to email us, we do have a stormwater email that, with your name, address, where the pictures are and when they were taken, just so we keep a running log and we have it. So I
Okay.
appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
wasn't going to say anything. My name's Deanna Doan. I live at 565 West Wayne Avenue. So we're at the bottom of West Wayne, where the Little Darby Creek comes through. So after listening to Steve's description, so my question is Maplewood Road, that one, is that to mitigate that flooding there? Or is there anything in place? Because that creek comes from like essentially Club La Maison, where they flooded, where we all know, like, their facility was flooded, and then the water keeps, we had trash from people 5 blocks away in our yard. So our whole yard flooded, and we have 3 pumps in our basement, so we mitigated it our own selves, but the water was up over West Wayne Avenue. And we have a culvert, so I didn't know if that was on the list at all, West Wayne Avenue at, below Arbordale, between Arbordale and Crestview.
I know exactly where you mean. So the Maplewood project is an infrastructure project. So that's an extension of an existing storm sewer. It's not a flood mitigation project. But I will tell everybody, after the recent storms, we do have these 2 big projects out. We're looking at other areas now, okay? The manager and one of the commissioners and myself, we've been talking to a lot of folks from Oakford and all those areas.
Right, because Arbordale, I mean, all those houses along there, I'm used to it. I bought the house for my parents, so for 40 years I've watched it happen. And, there was a lot of young families who bought on Arbordale that literally were pulling everything out of their basements. I saw lots of rugs from basement. That creek just, and I understand at 7 inches an hour, it's hard to mitigate that. There's no place for the water to go. Even if you had perfect stormwater management, there's only so much. But is there anything going on, I feel like everybody talks about North and South Wayne, but that end of West Wayne, really, and where South Devon, where you have some problems at that culvert on South Devon, is there anything like being addressed? Are you going to dredge the creek? Are you going to look at that creek at all? Or
So there's no specific plan right now, but like I say, I know the manager and the commissioners, and we're going to be looking at everything. I'm not saying there will be. I'm just saying that
You're
will be
aware?
evaluated, right?
But it's crazy. It's literally like a river. And I mean, the water was, so you had the creek, but the water was coming from behind the house, a house over from me, through the yard, onto West Wayne Avenue. Like a foot of water was in front of my house, and people were trying to drive through it. So, I mean, and I understand that's very unusual for that to happen. It's got to be one of those mega storms. But the creek does come up, and people get flooding when one of those storms or hurricanes comes through. So hopefully you'll start to look at that end of town as well as in options, whether it's dredging or widening or so. And I'll send some pictures too. I do have some pictures, so I'll send them to you guys.
Great. Yeah, thank you. I know in the township-wide assessment, there were some projects suggested in that area, yes, a conceptual type level. But
Yeah, and
there
it's
were
hard to
some
explain to
projects.
people, like, and I'm sure anybody who lives in North Wayne or Poplar, the creek is like this deep on a normal day. They don't understand that literally the water comes, that's 6-7 feet of water comes up, and it's a raging river that comes through. So I don't know if a bigger culvert like you've done on Shimoni would help, but it's crazy amount of water, and like I said, trash from 5 blocks away in my yard. It was really a bummer that it was trash day. So it was really gross. So anyway, but I just hope that you think about that side of the township as well with some of these projects.
In one of the areas, if I may, what we have found too, that in your particular area that's feeding that is, we go back to where the old Kmart parking lot is, when that was redone, which
You could see the difference when that was redone, when they did the parking lot and all that building on that edge where they took out, I call it the rusty scupper, but I mean, that's how long ago it was. But when that was, you could, literally, it came that much quicker.
Because-
That was a huge difference. I'm sure if you asked La Maison, they would say the same thing.
in those bigger storms, when you watch that, it almost looks like a rocket at the backside, the discharge that comes out of there. And as part of this, and Steve and I met with Meliora this afternoon, the engineering firm, they're looking outside the township as part of this, of how this feeds into the township. And I know this committee has talked about that. And we're finding that, as part of this, there's a lot that's coming in your particular area. There's a lot of water that, again, is being fed in tredyffrin not only to the North Wayne area, but into this particular area, especially coming off that parking lot when that was redone in that particular area. There is a huge volume of water that has been picked up now that is moving much faster into that area. And I know Steve doesn't like to hear this, but there is so much silting that has come in from this last storm, and the depth of creeks that used to be 2 to 3 feet in depth now are down to 6 to 8 inches of how much has come in. So that is another problem that we're going to have to deal with very rapidly here because of this last storm. And being out in a couple of the creeks with some residents in the last week, it is incredible to find out what the depths were.
Up against our fence. So
It is.
You know, a lot of that is what's went into the creek. I mean, we had a foot of just stuff.
And a lot of trash is actually been moved into yards, so as part of this.
My name's Rob McCullough. I live on Oakford Road at 27 Oakford Road. A lot of my neighbors got flooding, especially in Arbordale, Oakford, and West Wayne. And a lot of them talk to me about the Mill Creek and the dam at Mill Creek, and that there's a manual release, and when it fills up, the homeowner has to release it. Otherwise, we get flooding. Can you guys just solve the mystery? I have no idea. I hear 300 different things from neighbors. So could you tell me what role the Mill Creek and the dam plays, and if you have any plans?
So that there is a dam operation plan for that, and the swim club, if you will, the caretaker, it's his responsibility. It notes in there that if, large storms are forecast, and you've seen, I don't know if you've seen it, when they're telling us that, the remnants of a hurricane are coming this way, he does do that. So some of the folks in your neighborhood asked me the same question. They said, was it open? Wasn't it open? We don't know if it was or wasn't. We don't know if opening it or not opening it, how that would have affected our residents. I do know the storm, came upon quickly, very quickly. So we don't know that sequence of events, nor do we know that if he did open it, would have that helped? Was it open? So we don't have that. But there is actually, and it's we have copies here, and it's at the DEP office in Norristown too that states, what they have to do for these things.
Well, is there any thought about the township acquiring that piece of the property, either through easement or something like that?
As far as, and I don't want to say this is Bible, but to the best of my recollection, it has to be done. It has to be, manually activated.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, I'm John Sheehan. Is this meeting being televised, even though it's an informal meeting? Okay. How do you put this event, August 13th, into the perspective of other events over the last, 10 or 15 years? I know, Paige, you said you like looking at event history, and,
Yeah.
Paul showed us photos from 2007, and, I know there's been other big events. Is this the biggest one? How often should we expect events like this?
I think that this is probably the biggest one. So I took a look at a couple of weather stations in Wayne, and one recorded 3 inches in an hour, another one recorded 4 inches an hour. I went and I looked at NOAA's charts as to, for a 1-hour storm, 3 inches of rainfall, that equates to the 200-year 1-hour storm. So that unfortunately is something well beyond what any stormwater system could handle. Of course, some of these areas historically flood in much, much smaller storms, but that's along the lines of what we're looking at.
Okay. What are the top 2 or 3 drivers of what's causing this problem with, stormwater runoff that damages property and threatens life? What are the top 2 or 3 things that are causing it that could be controlled? I assume impervious coverage is one of the big ones.
Impervious coverage, I mean, but of course Radnor Township has been largely built out for quite a while. One of the things it's real tough to solve, and you saw it, even if inlet grates started out clean at the beginning of the storm, they were getting clogged by all the debris during the storm, and even if there were pipes that had capacity left in them, the water wasn't getting in there. I think that's one of the big things that contributes to it. Heather? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, a lot of times, simple things of just cleaning inlets and, keeping up with infrastructure, but, another is implementing projects. Honestly, it's just getting projects going that are going to help at key points in the township, and it's going to take little by little, but once we start implementing projects, it's never going to solve a 200-year storm event, but it greatly is going to help the township. It's going to help flooding. It's going to be safer. We saw pictures, right at that Wawa intersection. This poor guy was stranded with it was up to his chest in water. His car was floating down Lancaster. That's just an enormous amount of water, but I think there are things that we can do, and that storm was so big, infrastructure. I know I was talking to Steve, just seeing how some of the culverts handled some of that water. But I think staying on top of that, but just implementing smart and effective stormwater projects to start chipping away at flood mitigation is just kind of what's needed. You can't never prepare for a 200-year storm event, but on a regular basis, I think if we get some projects going, I think it's really going to make a difference.
So keeping inlets open and clear, that's a biggie.
It's a help.
That's part of it.
Yeah, that would
and
seem to be highly controllable.
Well, but
by the residents, by.
But that inlet only holds so much water. There's only so much big an area
Right.
that if you're going to have not even saying a 200-year storm, but you get a 25-year storm in there, it's going to flood. There's only
Right.
so much, even if that inlet is clear and the pipe is clear,
Right.
that it physically can handle the
Right.
volume of runoff.
So in the overall scheme of things, how do we prevent massive quantities from getting into inlets that don't have the capacity to hold them? How do we arrest the water at where it falls?
I think by you can put in smart, environmental friendly projects that in areas that yield good soil percolation, that will get the water back in the ground, or storage pipes that will detain the water. So when systems fill up to that point in larger storm events, that there's some outlet, there's some infiltration, there's some storage to detain it and slow it down so that it'll reduce the amount of flooding.
Asphalt surface, the water moves pretty fast. As fast
Correct.
as it can. Grass, it moves pretty fast too.
Well,
No-
it's
nowhere
a
near as
slower
fast.
rate with
It's
grass.
Slower rate.
Slower rate,
right.
but I'd say with all the rain that we've had lately,
It's probably not much of a
Right.
difference in a
The-
storm that intense.
the storm that intense, and with
Right.
all the rain we had and the ground was saturated, it,
Right.
made for poor conditions.
Right. My next question is probably for Bob and Steve. My understanding is the coverage of impervious surface is one of the big drivers. The township has been highly built up. The area where I live, Windsor Avenue, Wawa, there's a 30-acre area there that is draining into right next to Wawa. And my understanding is a large reason for that is because of all the impervious surface uphill of that. Does that sound right?
That's generating a lot of
Okay.
runoff, yes.
Has any consideration been given to calculating the amount of impervious cover for for property owners? And if they exceed a certain amount, let's say they exceed 50%, let's say somebody's got 80% coverage, to tax them on an excess over some threshold amount.
That would be a zoning violation if you were in excess of what was permitted.
Well, I'm talking about what's already been done. The Kmart, and that's in Different Township, but that parking lot. There are businesses on Route 30 that are almost, 80, 90% covered.
But if you check the zoning, it depends that in the commercial versus residential, it's, residential's average, maybe 35%.
Right.
Depending what the ordinances are. Steve, is it like 80% for commercial?
I'd have to,
I have
there's
to
even
look,
different
but it's much
commercial
higher
districts.
for commercial.
Yeah.
There's various commercial districts.
But my thought is there are some commercial areas that have a very high percentage of impervious surface. And they were built prior to the stormwater ordinance, and they're large contributors to the problem.
Well,
And just to go a step further, because of all that water pooling next to Wawa, we're realistically looking at building a cistern under Banbury, Francis, Windsor area that would hold thousands of cubic feet of water that's coming from the runoff from those very highly developed, covered impervious surfaces.
Well, unless the township zoning enacts something
Right.
that, at this point, there's nothing they
Right.
can do. The only way that it kicks you into having to do stormwater management is if you're over 500 square feet. So if you were to put an addition on and you were 600 square feet, you would be required to do that. So unless something is rewritten in the zoning ordinance, we, until that time comes, which honestly, with the storm event we have, whether it was impervious, whether it was stone, whether it was grass, it was going to flood.
Understand.
Yeah,
Right,
and
I understand.
and really, whether you're
What I'm talking about is taking the severity of that down, and for lower level flood conditions, the kinds that happen every 2 or 3 years, maybe minimizing those a further notch down. But has any discussion taken place at the Board of Commissioners about looking at the ordinances that allow so much impervious coverage?
Well, I think one of the things that we've started to briefly touch base with is with the stormwater fee, is starting to utilize some of the properties, and I know we had a brief conversation at the EAC this evening about utilizing just these properties here. They pay a fee, so if they're willing to store water on this property, there's the opportunity to work with them, is if you can store water on your property, utilize your property and hold it, either hold it, disperse it there, or hold it and then release it slowly, then you could trade off and say, if you're willing to do that, then maybe maybe we can either reduce or eliminate your fee if you're willing to do that. So there are options to be able to utilize. There are some businesses already saying, look, we'll do that. If you're willing to get rid of that fee, you can use our parking field that is all impervious, and you can store water there, which in some of these areas feed heavily into the South Wayne area, Lancaster Avenue areas, that it is completely impervious. So these are options that the board will look at and consider, bring in front of this board. The EAC is willing to look at this and be a part of this, to where, because we are built out and because maybe we have zoning that's restricting, now we have another tool that we can use to say, will you participate with us? And we do have several of these located in the township on several properties right now, one on Stratford and one over on Conestoga on a property where they actually hold water on the properties. So this is something that we could actually entertain as part of this, and we could actually then even approach PennDOT to try to do this in some of the major routes because of the pictures we saw earlier of the flooding on Lancaster Avenue, and that to be able to hold some of that water in some of these areas. Because right now, it's hard to get PennDOT to do anything, and I'm sure their pipes are blocked to no end, and to see them pull a truck out here anywhere, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn here. I mean, to get them to come out here to do anything is almost impossible. So that falls upon the township, all of us, our tax dollars, to help do their job, to help do this. But their pipes, I know on several times when Steve was the public works director, we had to go out and clean their pipes because they were completely packed under these storms, just silted in with trash, debris. So I'm sure we will be back doing that again, pumping all these pipes and inlets and sewers out. So, and I think this board, I'm sure, will be very involved in that, all of that process too as well.
Mr. Shane,
yes.
we've had informal talks with our consultant that's doing the majority of the stormwater management work of, it's a very big issue, but in the future, going to the commissioners to look at our zoning ordinance, to look at our stormwater management ordinance, to look at our subdivision land development ordinance as a whole, and they can be used somewhat for what you're saying. It's a very big topic. It's not something, you know, there's a lot of thoughts on that. Once it becomes the ordinance, it becomes more objective, but getting to that point is very subjective, as you know, as far as the stringency. But that idea is out there.
Good, thank you.
Anyone else? I know a couple people just walked in. If they want to share either flooding that they had this week or photos. There's also a stormwater management email that you can send. Please, you know, if you think of things later or you want to send pictures at any point, you know, we try and keep everything on record to talk about.
Hi, how are you? I'll be quick. My name is Jeff Adams. I live on Arbordale. I apologize. There's probably some of my trash in your yard. One thing I just wanted to just touch on and discuss was obviously the storm was pretty severe, and we've seen severe storms in the past. I know 2013 we also had some flooding on Arbordale as well. But in general, and I know, I'm sure a lot of people in Radnor, not just where I live in West Wayne, we get a lot of water when it's just raining normally and not to the severity that we saw a couple weeks ago. And so managing the water in our yards on a normal basis is a struggle, and not to the point where it's flooding our homes, but it does make it difficult to manage the water within our yards, to enjoy our yards. And so I think one thing that would be very helpful to us is really getting some assistance or guidance of how can we resolve that, just options of how we can resolve it, solutions, because I'm sure you don't want us going out on our own and trying to resolve these matters, because it's only going to impact other neighbors and also, you know, downstream. So just being able to get solutions for us to address would be very helpful.
Mr. Adams, I would meet with you, and I meet with many residents to provide input in this way. So legally, I can't do your design, but people do call me and say, we're thinking of this, and I will give them options and possibilities and advice, and I would gladly meet with you or any resident or any of your neighbors to do so. I do it rather regularly.
Okay, and also if you have recommendations on people that we could utilize as well, that would.
Absolutely.
Okay, great, thank you.
Well, and I think there's other things too that we could work with you, and I think I would like to beef up our incentive program that we have is for things like rain barrels and things like rain gardens, especially if you sit in a low-lying area, that it's not just water that's standing in low areas on your property, that by putting in a rain garden with some wet-tolerant type plants, so you don't have that water sitting in there and that they're sucking that water up and yet maybe have a more beautiful but manageable yard, things like that, that I think, you know, I'd like to start discussing this fall, is that to help homeowners who are willing to do that, willing to do rain barrels and rain gardens, every little bit helps. And if everyone does something like that on their property, A, you can enjoy your property more, but B, it helps everyone and the trash downstream.
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And this is a perfect example, I know, when we were out at your property, is when these things, when everybody tells us and lets us know, something happened with your property that changed in the neighborhood, that created the water flow there. And that's where it's helpful for us to know as we look at these designs, because something has radically changed to make that water go the way it has gone, looking at the water flows. So anytime residents to either email the committee, email myself directly, Steve, your commissioner, let us know, because in the bigger picture, something's going on, and for us to find out where that is, something has changed, like in your neighborhood, that has created that type of flow that is not usual. Something is creating that. So whether or not someone has built something or something has changed somewhere, for us to get on that and get Steve involved, the committee involved, this is helpful as we look at this and evaluate, because something has changed to create what you live through now, and be able to help. And hopefully, like in your situation, we can correct it and then be done.
And that's why
We've got to do that.
One of the reasons people say, why do I need a grading permit for what I'm doing? It's such a small item, even though I don't have to do stormwater management. And one of them is, we're looking, from a zoning standpoint, to Mr. Sheehan's point. So when we get a grading permit, we do a zoning review to check impervious cover per the zoning ordinance, right? So we want to make sure you don't go over on that. But we're also looking to see that, to the best of our ability, it's not perfect, that somebody isn't changing something like that. And it's an education thing. I was just telling the manager, somebody could put in raised planting beds in their backyard, and that doesn't necessarily require a grading permit. But that can cause significant changes in runoff. Something that was once sheet flow through a backyard is now concentrated. So I think there's an education standpoint, but I'll gladly come out and meet with you, sir, and any of your neighbors, and that goes really for anybody in the township.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak?
If it's on another stormwater matter, you can bring that up too.
Feel free to come up, because everybody's here to help. So whatever you say, nothing's wrong.
Just so you know, I know a couple people walked in late. We don't have a quorum tonight, so we're not voting on anything, we're not recommending, but we felt it was important, especially after this last rain event, to hear from the residents. So we just, we're happy to talk about any project, any flooding, whatever you want, and just know that because we don't have a quorum, that we're not voting, we're not taking action, we're not doing anything like that tonight.
Hello, my name is Tina Landis, and I have a store and a building at 124 West Lancaster. And we're attached to four other buildings. And
I'm Dalia Dalkutia at 120 Lancaster, one door down.
Right.
But we all five of us affected by we were all by this last storm. So we have some pictures and questions.
If you want to put the pictures on the table, they'll zoom in right in the center of the table right here, so everyone can see.
So, so this is down from us a little bit higher, closest, what you call this, drainage, right?
yeah, it's a French drain.
Was complete,
Yeah.
huh?
Storm inlet?
Inlet, is that what
Inlet, yes.
Okay, so it was completely clogged. So the water was running like a river and dripped. Well, before I go there, right above this, there is a little higher area in front of Avenue Eats, used to be Avenue Eats, with another one of those, also clogged and the weeds growing inside. And the water that was going towards supposedly this one was not even getting there. Most of the water was flowing down the little stairs to our parking lot. So the water was coming from down the Lancaster and from the back of the Avenue Eats former area, from back of their parking lot. So it tripped our parking lot.
Wow.
Yeah,
So-
we have several sinkholes
Yeah.
that we're getting estimates to fix.
On Lancaster.
on Lancaster.
Right.
But our problem, we think, is exacerbated by
Could
PennDOT.
you-
Oh. Our
Thanks.
problem is exacerbated by PennDOT, who comes and maybe resurfaces the road over the years, and they're at a higher grade than us. And as you can see, well, maybe you can't see from this picture, but Lancaster is higher, and we end up lower. And the French drain that is entirely clogged all the time. The township has come out occasionally and cleaned it out, but it needs to be maintained on a regular basis.
And unfortunately, that's a PennDOT. I mean, the township, because it's a state road, PennDOT owns and maintains the inlets. And if it gets, I know Steve has intervened to clean them.
Okay.
But unfortunately, if they're along Lancaster, they're PennDOT inlets.
So that's not, okay. So does the township contact PennDOT to do this, or do we as individual building owners have to do it?
We have been in contact with PennDOT for years. And there's the result of our contact with them. We will make continued contact. I believe at the end of next month, we have a tour with PennDOT. We actually have them coming out here to show them numerous problems that we have in the township. We will run this by them. We will also take this video of the pictures and send this to PennDOT as well. The news, whether we are going to like this or not, they intend to pave Lancaster Avenue from border to border next year. So there's a lot of work that's going to have to be done on this road before they pave. So I'm not sure if they're going to come in, mill it, and then pave it and then be gone, but there's a lot of infrastructure that needs to be corrected before they can pave on this. And this is an example here. I'm sure there are culverts and pipes under the ground that are probably crushed. I know there are some in numerous areas, and this looks like this could be an area right now that I'm not sure there's any drainage going on, that more than likely. I will ask our Public Works Department to actually camera these pipes, put a camera in here and see if these pipes aren't crushed in here to see what's actually going on under the ground.
Well, one of the other problems are the utilities. I would say at least every 2 or 3 months, somebody's digging in front of our stores. It's Verizon, it's Aqua, most recently it's been Pico. Okay, they come in, they dig, and then they put a topping on it, and it gets washed away. So their repair of what they've dug into is inadequate. So who do we go for that? Do we have to call the utility?
Well, PennDOT should be requiring them to replace that.
No, this is on our parking lot.
Oh, on.
It's between, they actually come into our parking lot and the PennDOT, so half's PennDOT and half's us. And they dig holes. They interrupt business.
If it's in a PennDOT road, they should be responsible before signing off on any, closing out a permit, that they should come out, PennDOT, and inspect it. Now, if it's your private property, then I think that would be something that utility company directly, and whether the township can get involved, but
If it's within the right-of-way of Lancaster Avenue.
It's
It
PennDOT.
falls under the PennDOT
Right.
highway
Well,
occupancy
whoever it
permit.
falls into.
So we can help, we'll make.
Yeah,
I
the
mean,
township has to have our back. So
We
you're the
recommend
ones that
both.
have to contact them because you have the power.
Well,
Let us know.
Yeah, we'll make the
Let us
call.
know. We'll make the calls. So let us know.
Fine.
By letting us know now. And then if it would be okay, if you would like us at your next meeting, we will run the camera videos of this pipe so that at the next meeting, we'll have our crew and we'll have the video of running the
Yeah.
pipes in here to see what the condition of the pipes. If there's any other areas you would like us to camera within an area, shoot us an email and we'll bring the videos at the next meeting for you to view. So just shoot that to us.
Sounds
Will we
good.
have
As well.
Will we have notification when this is going to be done?
At their next meeting, we will make sure at their next scheduled their meeting, we will actually have the videos to show at the next meeting.
Okay.
So this one, the number 2 inlet, is a a little bit above on that higher parking lot. So that falls into Township?
No, if it's private property. It depends where the inlet, if the inlet is in between the right-of-way of Lancaster Avenue, it's PennDOT. But whoever, if it's out of the right-of-way, that means it's private property, and that, I don't know, Steve, would we own some storm sewer that would be through private property? There's got to be instances of that.
The vast majority of storm sewer that the township owns, and is obviously it's in the township streets.
Right.
There's areas where we do have easements in some of the newer developments, but there are folks that have inlets on their property that were built
Years
you know,
ago.
decades ago
Without
that,
easements,
that
right.
a property owner installed to assist with the drainage thing. And sometimes they may connect to our system or to PennDOT, so.
So then who would be responsible if it connected to the system, but it was on private property, but there was no easement?
My guess.
I think the
and-
property owner.
Yeah, I would concur.
Unfortunately, yeah.
I would guess the
I
same.
would think it would be the private property owner. Unless there's an easement that's,
So who contacts I mean, do we get into neighbor talking to neighbor, or do?
you need to find out who owns the property.
Well, we know who owns the property.
Then that would be the
Yentis
person-
owns the property.
Yeah, that would be the person I would talk to.
First, you want to see how far off
The
of
right of way,
Lancaster
right.
that is.
Oh, it is,
and-
it's off, it's their parking lot, and their
Well,
parking lot is
well,
not like
but
our
the-
parking lot.
The
They
right
don't-
of way
The right-of-way
extends
extends
past
beyond.
curb to curb.
Beyond the paved surface, though. In some cases considerably. It depends upon the area.
Okay.
So,
So you mean that may belong to Yentis or may not? You mean it's not clear?
depending upon where it is relative to Lancaster, it may or may not be the private property owners. It may be PennDOT's, maybe the private property owners.
So what would be a way to find out for sure how, where this?
I would, if you think it's in the parking lot and you feel it's not along the roadway or a couple of feet back, I would talk to the owner.
And they should know?
Well, they would be responsible for it. If whoever owns the property would be responsible for either resetting a damaged inlet, either regrading so that flow gets to it.
Okay, because the water doesn't even get much into that, and another thing that is clogged, so it's two problems.
So it's two problems, right? If water doesn't get to it, but then water gets to it and it's
It's
clogged,
clogged.
it's still not a help, right?
Okay. My other question about those existing in those other inlets, that we noticed that down the street both ways, other inlets had considerable depth. There was like, I don't know, 10 feet deep, where these ones were like barely like this much, and we didn't even see the pipe. How is that?
Well, it's so clogged and you can't
You can't see
see the
it.
pipe. It needs to get cleaned out so you can
From,
reveal
like,
where the pipe is. There's a
that
pipe
deep?
down there someplace.
Right.
I mean, inlets could be only 3 or 4 feet deep. They could be, 10 feet deep. But you need it cleaned out to be able to tell what's going on down there.
Wow. Okay, so
We have to call Yentis and ask them about that, and wait till next
And-
month. You're going to get PennDOT involved.
Yeah, let's see what the video shows next month, what Steve brings. And then in the meantime, I would also contact the owner
okay.
to see and attack it from both ends.
So now I have, thank you very much. Now I
Sure.
have a separate question though,
Sure.
about our property in the back. We have a problem, terrible problem, that does not make sense to us. So
What is the address?
120 West Lancaster,
Okay.
next to Landis.
Okay.
So we are the last ones in the back. If you look in the back, we are the last ones out of 5, I think, little businesses. And so we are at the end of that backyard where it ends with the wall of Landis's kitchen.
Okay.
So all the water is coming down from that side because we are lower, but also the whole water from Landis whole restaurant and the kitchen, which is long building, was coming into that backyard, which is only 18 feet width. And we looked from the other side of the building. There was no even, I don't think there is a stormwater, what do you call those?
A gutter?
Yeah.
Okay.
No even gutters on another side where is the huge parking lot. So the water was coming like in Niagara Falls. And unfortunately, we were so terrified with all this. We didn't even film, but there was literally Niagara Falls falling into this little backyard.
And that's an older building. Who knows if it has?
So, huh?
Who knows if it has roof leaders? That might be
Yeah.
just so old a building that,
So they did have a new roof put there.
Yeah, there was a new roof put on in 13.
But how do we figure out what is this? There must be some kind of structural overlook. How can all this water come from all over into that little backyard? Because the water was coming up to the knees
Right.
in the back of the salon, and the water was rushing into the salon. It was absolutely.
and Steve, I don't know of any stormwater basins or management or anything in that area. It just might be that there's so much impervious that with the volume and the intensity of the storm that came, that it just, wherever the water normally goes, where it just wouldn't be stored in that area, it probably had nowhere to go, and it just got flooded. And
if you
those
have-
buildings are old. I doubt very much that they're doing anything else, but if they have gutters on them, and if they do, they probably just daylight right at surface. So that impervious surface and the volume that it creates, probably, that's what happened.
So we wonder, are there some kind of code regulations, some kind of rules where somebody considers where the water goes, how it can go into such a little spot from all?
I mean, I think
around?
without looking at a survey, just to see what the topography's like, if we had that, and I don't know if that's an area that we have, which I don't think so, but we'd have to look at a survey. I mean, we can look at USGS maps, which is a high-level look to see what the topography's like, but you're not going to get the fine-tuned topography that you're going to need to see, where runoff is going.
Topography, you mean the ground?
Yes, the
levels?
ground, how the
Okay.
ground is sloped.
Lay of the
and-
ground.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And what about the structures of the buildings, where the gutters go and how it distributes the water? Is that somewhat regulated or not?
No.
No.
So
Now, if it's a new structure and it was a new development in the township, yes, it would be. But anything that has been built before, was it like 2004, 5, before the stormwater, Radnor stormwater ordinance was enacted, that unless they make a change, an addition, or something to their property, they're not required, that I'm aware of, to do any stormwater management.
So there might be no solution to resolve all that.
I don't know if it's
You
not a
might be able to
solution.
work with them to try and come up with something to help that. Now, if the clogged inlet, though, is back behind there, that just, that probably just created
Right,
a
that created,
bathtub
that
effect.
added to it, right.
But, perhaps you could work with them and see if perhaps they might add gutters and put in rain barrels or something to that effect that might help in smaller storms.
Right.
Okay, just to look for some kind of solution and
I can stop out at your property and take a look, and maybe we can see if there's any suggestions we can make to, excuse me, to the other building owner. I don't know if we'll be able to enforce anything, but I'll gladly come out and take a look. I'm going to get you my card before you leave.
we would appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Charles, hi. Is it official now, or we have a quorum now?
I sincerely apologize.
Would anyone else like to speak? Do you want to move on?
If we don't have any other public comment, then the other matter that we wanted to discuss today was continue on Banbury Francis Windsor, and Heather can fill you in on, we took a walk out there with the Township arborist yesterday, and looking at if something was scaled back from what was originally proposed, how that might impact the trees in the neighborhood.
Okay, so as Paige said, we met yesterday, both of us, with the arborist, who, by the way, John was fantastic. We walked every little inch of and talked about various scenarios of what could happen at Banbury Francis Way. The couple of trees, when I say couple, I think there was like 4 or 5 that could possibly, what he calls, be conflict, had conditions such as severe dieback from bacterial leaf scorch, decaying type of conditions. So when we walked the site, he had said he did not see a tree that was a healthy, thriving tree that would be impacted, that the only 4 or 5 trees that could, if they were impacted, were ones that were diseased. And he said probably it would be a good recommendation, and he's happy to walk the site with the residents just to show you some of the decaying trees so that you don't have that in your property, and that if they were impacted, we would replace them with not just one, but several healthy trees. What would be nice is that we'd like to add trees to your street and to improve the vista of your street. So I just, I know that was a big concern. It's a concern for us too. We want to add trees. We want to add beauty. We don't want to take trees down. But they're the only, at the corner, what is that address? Was at 105. There were some smaller pines and shrubs there that could easily be saved. And there's, I talked to the arborist, and what they would do is they would gently remove these, they would plant them, and when the project was done, they would put them back. And in fact, if the property owner at the corner wanted some additional buffering from the Wawa, that's definitely something that he would work with us. And during construction, I'm not saying it's happening, I'm just saying during type construction projects that do involve, in residential areas that are close to trees, to residents, that he would be on site and that he'd work with us and the township to make sure anywhere within a vicinity, even if it's a decaying tree, very sensitive of the roots and saving as much as possible. So I know that was a big concern, and it was a concern to us too, that we met with John, the arborist, who was very insightful, he's very knowledgeable, and and I'm happy to make copies of it. He actually prepared a letter last July, but we went over and we looked at all of the trees on site. So I just wanted to let you know that, we are listening to you. We do take your comments seriously. 105 is right behind the Wawa. It's right at the corner. And if you see it, there are some smaller type shrubs that he said there's no reason that we can't, and not the word store it, but to take them, plant them, and when the project's done, we can replant them there for that species of trees. Or not trees, they were shrubs. I think there were some hollies in there, but they were of a smaller size.
They were small and could be temporarily moved.
Correct.
And again, all of this, we were looking at a smaller footprint for this project, not the original footprint that the commissioners had been discussing for the 25-year. It will be something scaled back, more perhaps on the order of a 10-year storm.
Right. Originally, we had put forth a 10-year storm because we thought that was an appropriate size storm for that area. You have really 3 scenarios. One, you do nothing, which, especially after seeing the pictures, and I know that there was a guy who was stranded in like 5 feet of water, and I felt so bad for this gentleman in his car floating down Lancaster, but he was right at that intersection. Do nothing. Or 2, scale it back to a 10-year storm so that it's more contained in this intersection, and it's not going right up Windsor. I mean, it goes up. 301 is on the corner, maybe halfway up their property, which is really not that far up. Or the 25-year storm is what the board approved. With the 25-year storm, there were several designs, if I remember correctly. One of them was keeping the seepage bed in the road. One was keeping it off to the side in between trees, which that wouldn't be my recommendation. If you're going to do anything, I would keep it within the right-of-way. But what that would entail is also new utilities. So I guess getting some feedback from the residents, if you do nothing, then that problem still exists, which I really don't want to let it exist, because now it's a liability for the township. Money's been spent on preliminary designs. We know it's a problem, so to walk away from it and somebody get hurt is a huge liability. It's a safety issue. 2, we can scale it back to a 10-year storm, just to keep construction minimized more at that intersection. That would also entail realigning that intersection, which I think we talked about before, and doing a rain garden type structure, which I think would be nice, and planting trees. Or if the third would be what the board approved, was a 25-year storm in which we would keep the bed inside the right-of-way, not in between trees, and that you would receive new utilities, landscaping. So I'm just curious as to some of the feedback. I mean, we definitely need to do something, but I understand construction's not fun. I get it. I feel rest assured that when I walked with John that we weren't losing any trees. There were 2 along the bank property that were decaying that I think the bank would be very interested with some of the trees that we talked about putting back there. That would be really nice trees on that corner and then in the rain garden. So I know some residents are here tonight. I'd like to see your thoughts. Sure, come on up. Yep.
Just maybe quickly to add too, that the arborist did say that if you'd want to opt to go further up the street and replace utilities, that would also entail putting a lot more landscaping in, you know, talking about multiple trees to replace any trees that were lost.
I would just like to see any plans before we moved forward on anything. And I was also wondering, there's talk about a Wawa moving to Bob and Steve Wawa. So if we lose this Wawa, is that an opportunity to redo something there, or is that not?
There was no mention of
That closing. Yeah.
It was just the possibility of a Wawa being installed at the Sunoco and BP car wash. So we don't have any information on the other 2 Wawas in the township. 3. Bryn Mawr.
And to answer your first point, in all honesty, I would like to go back to the board and say, look, we're working with the residents, but we don't have anything in front of us. I mean, we have some designs. The board approved more of a final plan for the 25-year storm. So when we looked at the 10-year storm, it was more a high-level look just to get an idea. But that doesn't sit well with me. I'd like to see what would really occur at that intersection. I mean, I feel confident enough with the preliminary and high-level design of that, but I would like to come back to you with something a little more concrete to show you. And I would like to go back to the board and ask, could we either have T&M put forth a design or another firm pick up where they left off so that we have something to show you to discuss? Because right now, we don't.
And I would just like to say, too, that I'm speaking for myself, but I think most of the people on the street felt as if it wasn't just the construction, it was that it was going all the way up to my house, which I'm almost to the corner of Farm, and they were going to lose all the trees. And that's what we were reacting to. We weren't really reacting to construction. That is a pain. But we were worried about losing, 50, 100-year-old trees, or even trees that have been planted 20 years ago which are starting to look nice.
Have you seen this? I mean, I'm sure it's public record, but there was a review, and they went for every house on Windsor.
I'm talking about the original thing. I don't think you were at that meeting where they.
No, I wasn't. I wish I was at that meeting.
Yes.
But I know he went tree by tree, and there's like 4 that are possible conflicts. And when he says possible, they're possible that the construction can occur. It's just you need to be sensitive of the roots in that area, and that there are ways to construct when you're near a drip line of a tree. And he just wants to make sure he would be there so that he can direct whoever's doing the construction for something like that. So we have that expertise here, which makes me feel good that we have that. But of those trees, they were trees that he said were diseased and decaying. And
so how far up does that go? Which I'm not, because my trees are new. They're newer. They're like 20
So one of them is at 307 Windsor.
Okay.
One of them is 308 Windsor. There's one at the corner of Farm Road and Windsor.
They're going all that far?
And that's it, that's past it, yeah.
You're talking about the original design impact.
Right, but I'm just saying
You're
going
not
all the
talking
way
about-
up the
right.
street. Right, for the 10-year storm, there was nothing that would be impacted. There are 2 trees at the bank that are decaying and that are in pretty bad shape, that they
Yeah.
recommend taking down and replanting that corner.
We would love for them to we've been sort of trying to get them to put some trees back there too, just.
So, I mean, it's kind of up to you. I mean, some of the, I don't see any healthy trees that are here, that even if you go all the way up Windsor, that would be lost when I talk to John and we walk the site.
Okay.
And there are a couple that are decaying that he said are possible conflicts, meaning if somebody wasn't there and a contractor came in and just started, going through, construction that wasn't aware, but he wants to be on site and be a part of that, which is great, so that we're not taking down anything that doesn't need to be, and that even if it's a decaying tree, if it really wants to, the neighbor said, I love this tree, my kids grew up here, we carved in the tree, we don't want it touched, that we make sure even if it's decaying, we do protect it. And a possible conflict is possible, and that's why he would be there. So even if we went all the way up Windsor, he didn't see any healthy trees being lost.
Okay.
And plus-
that truly is our biggest concern.
And it's a reasonable concern to have, in that he also suggested while we're doing this, if we're going to go up the street and we're going to replace water and sewer lines, and if that's the direction it goes, we want to add to the vista of that street. We'd want to add some nice landscaping and street trees and things that would improve the neighborhood. We want it better than what it is today. Not that it's not great, it's great today, but when construction comes in, that's our goal.
Okay, so at this point, you're saying that you're going to go back and look for a 10-year plan? I mean, where will we be able to see something, or am I missing something?
Well,
Or is there
I just
something
want to say
already?
first, I don't want anyone thinking I'm going to the board, and we need to vote on it, so that's first of all.
Okay.
I would ask our committee to consider going to the board, that if the residents were in favor of any type of plan, whether it's a 25-year, the 10-year plan, that we need something concrete to show you. So I would recommend and ask us to vote that we go back to the board and say, look, we're working with the residents, but we want to give them more information. Can you authorize somebody to put together a plan that we can talk about?
Okay, and also the list of things that we brought up a few meetings ago, was there anything that looked like that could help? There's 14, I think, or 13 items.
I mean, I definitely think some items, like I know doing some, we talked about doing incentives, and I know one gentleman, brought up, well, there's neighbors above us that, why can't they do something? And I think if we take incremental little steps, and that Steve had mentioned, talking to upstream properties that have a lot of impervious and trying to get a project on there, and where there's opportunity, doing rain gardens and rain barrels and things like that, and working with neighbors of large impervious surface to do something. So I don't think that's off the table. I mean, I think every little bit can help.
Right. Okay,
We're looking at everything.
okay, thank you.
Sure.
Could I suggest that if it would be helpful, that if you want to have a meeting on the street, we could block off the street, put some tables out there, invite the neighbors to come out, lay the plans out, and have John Hosbeck there to actually go and point and show those trees and say, this tree, and
And
this way.
John wants
is
to do
very
that.
willing.
Yeah.
He wants to do
We can
that.
do that. We can block the street off. We'll bring some tables out and just be right on the street, yes. And do it right on the street.
Well, at this point, though, before we do that, I would like to, when we sit on the street and do that, have something in front of me that we can discuss.
Absolutely.
Like, it's not that I'm not trying to rush anyone, but I don't want to discuss if and that. I like knowing, here's a plan. Here's exactly how big this bed's going to be, and here's where it's going to be located. Because if we don't know where that is, how are we going to know what is and isn't impacted utility-wise and tree-wise? And we're just spinning our wheels. So
Perfect.
we have a quorum tonight. Hi, Charles. Hi. I'm very happy you're here. That's why I just wanted to see if some of the residents wanted to talk about it, because I would like to vote to go before the board and authorize just a better design that we can look at, something that closer to a design that works for everyone. And then we can take that design and we can go out there with the tree arborist, with Steve, with us, and get something done at this intersection, because honestly, it's a safety hazard. The pictures that I saw and the videos were just off the charts, not only at Wawa, but at other places. But we have a good jump start with the design of this, so why not move forward? And I think there's a way we can all work together and everyone's going to be happy.
I'm John Sheehan again from Windsor Avenue. Tonight we have 1, 2, 3, 4. We only have 4 residents here of about, I'm guessing of about 45 from the combination of Farm, Windsor, Banbury, and Francis. So I think it would be unrealistic for four of us to speak on behalf of everybody. But my sense of where I think our neighborhood was is, first of all, we want to do something to improve safety at that intersection. There are dangerous conditions there. And my sense is that the 25-year plan seemed way out of scale for the size of the neighborhood. The 10-year plan, which I think would come up partway up that 301 Windsor property, and in my understanding, it would extend into Francis and Banbury at the cross and that triangle. I think that that would be the kind of scale that would make a major improvement and be acceptable to the residents. One thing that I think is a sticking point, though, is reconfiguration of that intersection, because one version of the plans we were looking at a year ago had, instead of the soft turn coming from Lancaster onto Banbury and then staying left that goes into Windsor Avenue, that was going to be eliminated to make a larger area for the garden, the underground storage, and it was going to be a hard right turn from Banbury onto Windsor. And I know that quite a few residents, myself included, thought that was going to be a major loss of an amenity. Instead of a relatively easy turn, it was going to be a sharp turn at an intersection where there's a lot of traffic. A lot of times when residents from Windsor Avenue are exiting with the goal of going to Lancaster, that intersection's totally blocked, including cars that are waiting to further block it that are coming out of Wawa's parking lot. So I think that intersection as a whole, it's a sticking point.
Steve, has anyone at traffic looked at that to see, now that we've kind of gotten this far, to see what?
So we've had the timing adjusted at that signal, I think 3 or 4 times, but no matter what, you know, Lancaster is the main thoroughfare, but we have added green time to Banbury, but with Wawa there and with folks coming, not even going to Wawa, but folks from uphill.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, they come down that way to hit the pike.
What about the configuration? Has anyone looked at that?
It didn't get far enough. I mean, you know, we had almost complete design plans. I mean, it was what was for the 25-year event, which we were designing, which were, you know, I'm going to say 80% complete. I think we did run it by our traffic engineer. Not like a full study,
right?
But it's acceptable to do the T at that place. It was thought to do 2 things. I think the thought was you're going to reduce some impervious because you're getting rid of a lane, basically, right? You're getting rid of a lane, and it was a more, for lack of a better term, more normal intersection, right? Where you would come, you make your 90-degree right, you make your 90-degree left, and so forth. I mean, it's not something that had to be, but it was thought. I can ask, if you go a little further, we can bring this in front of staff traffic and look at it.
And I do remember we did talk about a little bit that we were trying to reduce impervious a little bit and getting a green structure in there. So I think that's definitely something. I mean, we can take a look at that, and maybe that's something that if we can go to the board and say, not only do we want to look at a 10-year design, but we want someone to take a look at this intersection to see, you know, the merit in changing the alignment or not.
One of the things that contributes to the traffic problem is there are two places to exit on the Lancaster. One is at Banbury, the other one is on Farm Road. On Farm Road, where there's a T there, right across the street at a slight diagonal is the exit from Manella's parking lot. That exit lane from Manella's parking lot is the exact reverse of where it should be. When Manella's redeveloped, they should have changed the location of the entrance versus exit. But the way it is now, when somebody's exiting on Farm Road, you not only have the east-west traffic on Lancaster, but there's a car coming at you from Manila's parking lot, which has almost caused accidents in the past. So right now, Banbury is the safe place to exit for everybody, just about everybody leaving either farm or Windsor Avenue. So I think the residents are, I think we're pretty flexible. We like the idea that that the Banbury triangle area would be the gateway to our little neighborhood, as well as the neighborhood on both Banbury and Francis, and we'd like to improve it. Right now, there's a telephone pole in the middle of that triangle with an incredible amount of equipment hanging from the top of it and wires all over the place. So, we're very grateful for your services being on this committee, and we have nothing but the highest regard for the Radnor Township staff as well. So, thanks for working with us.
No, and I agree. I know we kind of felt like we were here, but I think there was a lot of miscommunication way early in the project, and I feel like we're here, which is where we always hope to be.
Right.
That we're here to
Yeah.
work with you to get some flood reduction and
Yeah.
just beautification in that neighborhood.
Yeah, and just so you know, last year, the process we went through where we had, I think we had maybe 3 meetings with township staff. You came to some page, but I think what happened was when the residents said that the 25-year plan is too much, my understanding is that the valuation of the people who were going to advise the board said, well, to do anything other than that is too much money for the amount of payback. That wasn't the residents' position at all.
And I don't think that was ours either, because we
No,
initially proposed a 10-year storm event.
Okay.
That was our initial design, was a 10-year storm, and then previous board members no longer here decided we're gonna just do a 25-year
Yeah,
storm.
yeah. Well, then
And now,
that-
granted, it is gonna hold a 25-year.
Yeah, I
Will
understand.
definitely hold more water than a
Yeah,
10-year, so
yeah.
I understand that, you know, that you want to address stormwater, and he was maybe
Right.
excited to do
Right.
that, but
And there's been a lot of discussion about trees, and I've said this before at some other meetings, but our little neighborhood, there were about 4 developments that happened in our neighborhood. The latest one is 321 West Lancaster Avenue, the bank, that hasn't been built yet. But all the trees on that property are coming down. And the 115 Stratford Avenue property that was a heavily wooded forest area, all the trees on that property came down. If you take all the trees that came down on these properties, I think there was another one, the amount of tree basal area, the square inches of the diameter of trees at breast height, 4.5 inches height, 4.5 feet high, is equivalent to 26 years worth of all the trees planted in Radnor Township by the Big Tree Program. They plant 200 trees a year. 200 trees a year times 26 years is 5,200 trees. That's how much tree basal area came out of our neighborhood.
And you had also mentioned at a previous meeting that one of those developments were responsible for planting so many trees. And I was going to say, Bob's here. I mean, he definitely is the
Oh, yeah,
person
yes, yeah.
to talk to,
Yes.
is that,
The
to see
bank-
if that was ever done.
The bank has agreed to plant 10 trees on Windsor Avenue.
But I thought there was another project that you said that there were 70.
Bradford Villa or something?
Right, there were like
Well-
70 trees that were supposed to be planted.
Villa Stratford is the place where they took out massive amount of trees. And what they replaced them with are under the township shade tree ordinance, if you take out 100 units of trees measured in tree basal area, the replacement ratio is that you only have to replace 3%. So that's what happened.
But then if that's what they met the requirement,
Oh,
then.
they did meet the requirement.
Right, then unfortunately that's.
What I'm saying is that our little neighborhood has been deforested, although it met the requirements of the shade tree ordinance. And that problem, that disparity, contributes to the stormwater runoff problem in a major way.
Well, I think,
If you, the main thing I hear about stormwater is infrastructure projects. Expensive, underground, lots of engineering. Trees absorb a lot of stormwater. They're part of the cause of the problem. And in general, they're not getting much attention. And our neighborhood has been deforested.
well, I know that,
And the deforestation has caused additional stormwater runoff.
well, I know as part of this project, we were trying to do a rain garden. So there is going to
Right.
be underground storage.
Right.
Without a doubt, because
Right.
just of the sheer volume that needs to be stored.
Right.
The perk tests that were done in this area were
Good.
more than adequate, from what
Yes.
I understand. So if we do a rain garden, remove 2 of the decaying trees on the bank property.
Right.
And then plant various types of species and plant tolerant, wet tolerant type of rain garden
Right.
planting.
Right.
That I think that would look really nice. I also
Right.
think,
And just an additional thing, the 115 Stratford office property, they paid $60,000 of fees for the illegal removal of trees without a permit. They paid it into the township. Most of that money is sitting in the township tree fund, and our neighborhood would appreciate if some of that money was reinvested in where the trees came from.
that sounds like a really good idea.
Otherwise, what's happening
For this
is
project.
Our neighborhood has been deforested legally and according to the shade tree formula, but the fact is that it's been heavily injured.
That's-
The alternative is that we're gonna basically farm trees in our neighborhood and reinvest the proceeds in the rest of the township, which doesn't seem.
I hear a motion coming from the Stormwater Committee. Those
I'm just
funds should
itching
come.
over here.
I hear it.
I just, if there's funding that we have, like he said, that's sitting somewhere, which I kind of feel like it isn't, because if it was sitting that long and nobody did anything with it, somebody would be really
I think
screaming.
something's been done with it.
I think something's been,
We've been putting, investing that into trees and the projects, but again, this is one that I'm sure if you make a motion that is part of this, that the tree reforestation comes out of that fund, would be outstanding to be able to do that.
I would like to see that.
Good.
I would. We do have a quorum, so I would like to make a motion that we approach the board, and I don't, please chime in to word this properly, but that we approach the board, that we've been working with the residents, and we would like to have a firm, whether it's T&M or somebody else, to put together a design of a 10-year storm event. Because it sounds like, and I know you don't represent, not everyone's here tonight, but it sounds like from the last couple meetings we've had, that we're in agreement on safety, we're in agreement on flood reduction, we're in agreement on providing more green and trees in this location.
Right.
That a 10-year storm event might be the way to go. And it's not set in stone. We could get back a design and it doesn't work, or we're not happy with it, or, I mean, we just have to have a point to jump off of, and we need to start, or we'll never get to that finish line. So I would like to make a motion that we approach the board and ask, whether it's T&M or another firm, to prepare a 10-year storm event design that would include trees, rain garden, and at the same time ask if someone could, from traffic, look at that intersection to see if it's warranted or not.
Thank you.
Bob, can I ask what the status is, or maybe it's Steve, can I ask what the status of the T&M contract is?
For this project, that was ceased last year. Yes, yeah, when it was determined that the board didn't want to go further with the project, the project was ended. They were paid for what they had done, and that was it.
So if we were to make such a notice or a motion, we would have to go back out and go for bids for,
Well, the manager just asked me, so there's a certain purview he has, there's a certain price limit to him. I was going to call Rich Young tomorrow, and based on what he's done, and see if it falls under that, you may not have to go to the board if you don't mind working with them. And the thought would be you would, the scope of this, I would ask, since you have very specific ideas, help me prepare the scope and see if it can be done that way. If not, I think from a cost-effective standpoint, they have all this work, they have the data. It's probably cheapest to stay with them, but they'll have your input. And when I build these proposals, I do get very specific. I can say, you'll be working with this group, you're going to have X meetings, and we want 3 options, right? We want 3 options for 10-year storm based on your input. So we can write that any way we want. So the manager just asked me that, and I was going to give Rich Young a call tomorrow, and if it falls under his purview, that's one thing. If it doesn't, then we could go to the, if you vote, we go to the board.
And even if we don't need to go to the board, I think I would still like to go, or Paige and Charles or all of us, somebody from our committee go to the board, because I feel it's important enough to keep not only the board, the township staff up to date, but just the residents who are watching this meeting, or if they miss this meeting at a board meeting, they should know that we are serious about the stormwater, we're moving forward with a project, and just keep them up to date. I mean, I think that's the key, is just really, there's a little bit of a disconnect, I think, getting us in sync with the board, and just let us know either way, Steve, so.
I think procedurally that would be a good thing to do.
Right, I mean, yeah, whether we need to or not, I still think we should go before the board, just so that they know we're working with the residents to get a project that's going to work.
And that would be the September 10th meeting.
10th. So that was a lot to vote on.
So I guess to try and narrow it down, that we recommend going forth with a more formal 10-year design to see the extent of that design, and to provide landscaping and a rain garden, and to look at potentially teen intersection, and that if it should be able to proceed without the board's approval, we'll go that route. In the alternative, that we will go to the board and recommend.
Should we vote? Oh, okay.
That's it.
All
in favor? Yes. Aye.
Aye. And thank you again. I know this has been a couple months, the residents, that you've come to meetings, so I really appreciate the feedback and working with us.
So I'm happy, great with the motion, great. It's good that we're moving forward. My question is about really time frame. So Bob, if it does fall within your authority, the time frame for that, and if it doesn't, and the plan has to be made and go before the board, what's the time frame for that? Estimate.
If it falls within my authority, that can begin within the next couple days. If it's got to go in front of the board can approve that by motion on the September 10th.
Okay.
And then it can go. So
by
the
the
farthest
September-
extent would be September 11th would be the day Steve could call T&M and get going.
Okay.
So the soonest would be Monday, Tuesday.
So either way, by the September and
No
the
later
September meeting, we should have some kind of plan?
Yeah, it just depends when our meeting falls. So we're the second Thursday,
Well,
so it might,
we won't have a plan yet, but we'll have.
Let me see the date.
Approval to get a plan.
T&M would be authorized to do that design, so.
right, the 10th is the board meeting. Our meeting is the 13th.
Okay, so then their plan would take,
I mean,
I'm
I'd
just trying to
I'd
get-
honestly like
I'm
to
just
see
trying to
something
get
in
a-
October. I think they have enough data that,
Yeah,
It would-
don't-
It would probably take a minimum of 4 weeks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what it's going to come down to is, so we're going to ask them for options, and they're going to work with a member or members of the SWIMAC and myself. So it's the responsiveness of what we provide them. So when they say, what are you looking for? How quickly do we respond, as a group or just the SWIMAC? And I think Heather's right, they have a lot of data. So I don't see why a draft plan
should not
that
take
works.
5 weeks.
They-
It's 5 weeks between that
They
board
already
meeting.
did a few different scenarios, and
Right.
one of
Yeah.
those was a
Right.
10-year one, and
Right.
that's what we were basing our basic footprint off of.
right. Okay, so that said, it would be either by the September or October meeting where we would be able to bring the neighbors together to look at the plan?
Yeah, I think not September, but definitely like in October,
October.
if they're really running late, November. But if they're running that late, I'll be honest, I'm going
We
to
have
politely
like-
nag
we have
because.
we have 4 projects we're going to be asking them to be awarded so they're at. the-
T&M?
Yes, infrastructure design, so they're going to be getting a boatload. But we can make this the highest priority, that's not a problem.
Yeah, I would like to make this the highest priority, just because it's been out there a while, and you want to see what can be done. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly,
Yeah.
if I was a resident, I would want to see something.
Yeah. I mean, I think we have essential agreement with everybody that's looking for the same thing. Our priorities are the same, and I think everybody's on board. And I think now we really just need to keep moving it forward. But I agree definitely with John that there probably aren't enough neighbors here to say like, okay, 100%. So having that plan is really critical to that. I think, you know, as a great, let's just move forward kind of thing. So thank you all for your help.
Thank you.
To John for staying on this, and thank you guys for everybody really for participating. Thanks.
Thanks.
That would be really helpful to keep this going, because I feel like that's when things start getting pushed back, is when you lose momentum. And I feel like this has good momentum, and we're all on the same page. So with in regards to TNM, I think 5 weeks between that September 10th board meeting and our October 11th meeting should be plenty of time to put
They
something
have quite a bit of
forward.
data, so they're not starting from scratch.
Exactly.
They have
If
the
they were starting
survey.
from scratch, I would agree. But when they have a lot of data already there that they just need to shuffle it to the appropriate design, I think that's definitely doable.
Spot on.
Okay.
There any other matters that anyone would like to speak to? That being said, then maybe we can go back now that we have a quorum, and the meeting minutes from the past 2 meetings, or June and July meetings. Anyone have any comments on those?
I did not have any comments. You had 1 or 2 in an
I had a
email.
few
Typos. I saw that, which,
comments, yes.
outside of that, I did not.
Motion to approve the meeting minutes?
First, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The meeting minutes are approved for the June and July meetings. I guess, unless there's any other comments?
Steve, is there anything else you need, or Bob need to add?
No, we went over that project list, and we are going to, I should tell you this, yes, but I didn't know we were going to go this far tonight. So we do have some projects for T&M that I had mentioned, the Wooten Road Storm Sewer, and there's several other, they're strictly infrastructure projects, basically where pipe once was and now is not, or where it once was and is no longer functioning. One being out here where we have a lot of ponding and it's old terracotta pipe, improperly sized, Worcester Road, Wooten Road, and so, but they're very straightforward projects.
And so the next meeting too, I talked to Steve just briefly before the meeting, is that it's budget time again, and that probably the next meeting, which will be September, we're going to need to just focus, if we can, on that. It seems like we're not going to have anything back for the September meeting for Banbury Francis Way, so that might be a good time to talk incentives and talk budget with Steve. Now, Steve said he sent out, I guess, a month ago, that list.
You folks received, I think, it was given to you 2, maybe 3 times with updates, and it's also on the website under Stormwater Management.
That is the
Strategic-
latest one on the website?
Strategic
Okay.
projects. Now, that's going to get updated again. If it so pleases the board to award some of these contracts, they're all going to tick off, you know, award for design, award for design. So there may be some changes in that respect.
I just think it'd be helpful, just so I come, you know, just to see what the list looks like, so that
But you have it in
before
your,
the meeting,
you have it in an email, and it's posted.
and it's on the website. Okay. That's just helpful to see before we talk budget.
All right, if there's nothing else, then set the time and date for our next meeting, which is Thursday, is it the 13th?
The 13th.
Okay, at 7 PM.
Just real quick question, Steve, you'll let us know whether we need to officially, we're going to go anyway, the board, but you'll let us know?
Yeah, I'm
This
going to.
next week or so?
I'll call Rich Young tomorrow.
Okay.
Hopefully, I have a couple other things to go over with him on those other ones. Hopefully, if he can give me a verbal, or he says, hey, Steve, it'll take me like 2 days to give you a formal proposal, because I do want to include 3 options, working with the Stormwater Management Advisory Committee, streetscape, rain garden. I want to make sure we're fully covered in his proposal.
So this is, just our vote tonight's enough, you don't need anything in writing, correct?
No, ma'am.
We're good? Okay.
All right. With that, we're adjourned.